They insulted her scars in public. Until a general recognized her true face and silenced them all. The air in the grand ballroom of the Sterling Tower was not merely thick with the scent of expensive perfume and aged champagne, it was saturated with the barely concealed ambition of the city's elite. Crystal chandeliers, each droplet refracting light into 1,000 dazzling fragments, cast a brilliant, almost blinding glow upon hundreds of guests. Their glittering finery shimmered with every hushed conversation, every polite burst of laughter, every clink of delicate crystal glasses. Tonight was Omnitech Dynamics' annual charity gala, a glittering display of corporate philanthropy that, to the discerning eye of its founder, served more as a meticulously orchestrated stage for social maneuvering and power plays than any genuine altruism. A shallow performance, she knew, designed to polish tarnished reputations and inflate fragile egos. Near the opulent fountain centerpiece, where water cascaded over polished marble creating a soothing, yet deceptive, backdrop of tranquility, a small, unsettling commotion began to brew. An elderly woman, her frame stooped as if burdened by unseen sorrows, her clothes frayed and ill-fitting, a stark, deliberate contrast to the surrounding splendor, had somehow navigated the labyrinth of velvet ropes and vigilant security. Her presence, a jarring discordant note in the symphony of wealth, stood before Cassian Sterling and Seraphina Thorne. Her face, a canvas of exaggerated disfigurement, was an affront to the polished perfection of the surroundings. Deep, crimson scars seemed to pull at her features, twisting them into an unsettling grimace that made onlookers instinctively recoil, while a shock of unkempt gray hair escaped from beneath a worn, nondescript scarf. She looked, quite simply, like a specter of destitution, a living shadow in a palace of blinding light, a deliberate anachronism in this modern display of affluence. Cassian, Omnitech's young, impeccably groomed chief operating officer, recoiled as the woman dared to approach him. His meticulously sculpted smile, a fixture of his public persona, faltered instantly, replaced by a sneer of pure, unadulterated disdain. Beside him, Seraphina Thorne, his fiancée and a social media luminary whose entire life was meticulously curated for public consumption, gasped dramatically. She clutched her diamond-encrusted clutch as if the very air around the woman was toxic, an unseen miasma of poverty and despair. Good heavens, Cassian! What is this thing? Seraphina's voice, usually modulated to a honeyed sweetness for her online audience, was now sharp, edged with genuine disgust. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at the woman, her gaze sweeping over the disfigured face with an almost theatrical revulsion, as if it were a particularly offensive piece of art. Security! Get this vagrant out of here. She's ruining the aesthetic. This entire evening is tainted by her presence. Her outrage, she believed, was entirely justified. The woman was an unsightly blot on her perfect evening. The elderly woman, whose name they did not know, nor would they have cared to learn, merely observed them. Her eyes, beneath the exaggerated scars, held an unnerving depth, eyes that seemed to miss nothing of their superficiality, their thinly veiled cruelty. She spoke, her voice a raspy whisper that nonetheless cut through the ambient chatter, reaching those nearest with an unsettling clarity. Cassian Sterling. Seraphina Thorne. The names, articulated with a deliberate slowness, hung in the air, weighted with an unspoken, chilling accusation. It appears, she continued, her gaze unwavering, a ghost of a smile playing on her disfigured lips, a smile they mistook for senile idiocy but was, in fact, profound irony, that your performance has reached its crescendo. The game, my dear children, is now over. Cassian scoffed, a humorless sound that betrayed his mounting irritation and a touch of genuine bewilderment. Game? What in the world are you babbling about, old woman? Do you not understand where you are? This is not a soup kitchen. You are an eyesore, a blight on this magnificent evening, an embarrassment to our guests. Security. His voice rose, carrying a note of self-important authority, designed to project control and superiority. I said, remove her. Immediately. His blood pressure was rising, This was a public affront, a challenge to his newly acquired status. Serafina, regaining her composure with a practiced ease, stepped forward. Every movement radiated contempt, her expensive gown rustling with a soft hiss of disapproval. Honestly, the audacity. Look at her face. It's positively grotesque. And those clothes. You clearly don't belong here. Don't you have some alleyway to haunt? Some dumpster to rummage through? You disgust me. Her words were laced with a venomous sweetness, designed to publicly shame and humiliate, to make the woman wither under the weight of her scorn. She seemed to relish the small circle of curious onlookers who had begun to form, their murmurs of disapproval directed at the uninvited guest, precisely as she intended. Her public image, she believed, was being upheld by her swift and decisive action against this intruder. But the old woman did not flinch. Instead, her head tilted slightly, and a faint, almost imperceptible glint appeared in her eyes, a glint that spoke of ancient wisdom, vast power, and an impending reckoning. She had seen enough. And the irony, to her, was almost palpable. They were mocking the very image of the person who held their entire world in her scarred, yet undeniably capable, hands. The opulent gala, the sneering faces of Cassian and Serafina, the disguised figure of the old woman, all were but the final, public act of a meticulously crafted drama. This drama had been conceived not in a grand boardroom, but in the quiet, shadowed chambers of a mind that had, for decades, shaped the very technological landscape of the modern world. That mind belonged to Rhiannon Sterling, the invisible innovator, founder and visionary behind Omnitech Dynamics, a multi-billion-dollar empire forged from her unparalleled genius in robotics and artificial intelligence. At 72, Rhiannon was not merely wealthy, she was a titan, a living legend whose contributions to defense, medicine, and public infrastructure had reshaped nations, often in ways the public would never fully comprehend. Yet, few knew her face, and that was precisely how she had preferred it. Decades ago, in the prime of her career, a classified industrial accident had ravaged her features, leaving her with severe facial scarring. It was a cruel twist of fate for a woman who had always valued her privacy, transforming her from merely private to profoundly reclusive. The world knew her through her innovations, her patents, her philanthropic endeavors, her anonymous donations to scientific research, but never her person. She became a phantom, a whisper, the omniscient force behind Omnitech, content to pull the strings from the shadows of her sprawling estate, Sterling Manor, a fortress of solitude and intellectual pursuit. Her public persona, or profound lack thereof, earned her the moniker, the Invisible Innovator. The scars, to her, were a constant, painful reminder of the sacrifice she had made, a sacrifice she had never sought public recognition for. But isolation, even self-imposed, offered a unique vantage point. From her secluded perch, nestled amidst her advanced laboratories and ancient libraries, Rhiannon had observed, with growing dismay, the metamorphosis of her beloved company. More painfully, she had witnessed the subtle, corrosive changes within her own family. The vibrant spirit of innovation and ethical pursuit that had once fueled Omnitech, her life's work, seemed to be eroding, replaced by a relentless, insatiable pursuit of profit and a manufactured public image. And at the forefront of this corrosive trend were her grandnephew, Cassian Sterling, and his ambitious fiancée, Serafina Thorne. Cassian, a man whose ambition vastly outstripped his actual talent, had steadily climbed the corporate ladder, not through genuine merit or groundbreaking ideas, but through a masterful blend of sycophancy, strategic alliances with equally superficial executives, and ruthless self-interest. He was a master of appearances, his charisma a thin, shimmering veneer over a core of ruthless self-interest. Rhiannon had watched him, a slow, creeping dread settling in her heart, as he pushed for more aggressive, less ethical business practices, always with an eye on the quarterly reports and his own rising star, oblivious to the long-term damage he inflicted. He often spoke of modernizing Omnitech, a euphemism, Rhiannon knew, for stripping it of its soul, its ethical core, its very identity. Serafina was Cashin's perfect complement, a mirror reflecting his own superficiality. A social media influencer of immense popularity, her entire life was a curated masterpiece of luxury and manufactured perfection. Her every post, every public appearance, was meticulously designed to project an image of effortless elegance, boundless wealth, and enviable happiness. She saw Omnitech not as a legacy of groundbreaking technology and profound scientific advancement, but as a vast reservoir of funds, an endless well from which to fuel her extravagant lifestyle and maintain her carefully constructed facade of perfection. Together, they were a formidable, albeit utterly self-serving, duo, their combined hubris a growing malignancy within the company. Their disdain for Rhiannon's reclusiveness was no secret, it was a poorly kept whispered secret within their inner circle. They saw her invisibility as a liability, an old-fashioned eccentricity that hampered Omnitech's modern image, a relic of a bygone era. They whispered about her age, her irrational attachment to certain ethical principles that hindered progress, and, most tellingly, her iron grip of control over the company's vast resources. Rhiannon, with her acute intuition and a lifetime of understanding human nature, had sensed their clandestine maneuvers, their subtle attempts to undermine her authority, their thinly veiled discussions about how to guide her towards retirement, or, more accurately, how to wrest control from her aging hands and declare her incompetent. She had intercepted encrypted communications, listened to veiled conversations during family gatherings she chose not to attend but remotely monitored with her advanced surveillance systems, and observed their lavish spending, far beyond what their salaries should allow, clearly siphoning funds from the company through various shell corporations they believed she would never uncover. The final straw had come weeks prior. Rhiannon had overheard, through a sophisticated audio surveillance system she had installed in Cashin's office for this very purpose, a conversation between him and Serafina. They were discussing a plan, a rather crude but potentially effective one, to declare Rhiannon mentally unfit to manage the company. They spoke of her scars with thinly disguised revulsion, using them as proof of her supposed instability and withdrawal from reality. "She's an embarrassment," Cashin had sneered, his voice low but audible, laced with contempt. "An old relic, hiding behind those hideous scars. Omnitech needs a fresh face, a public face. Someone like me, who understands modern branding and public perception." Serafina had chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain, "And think of the optics, darling. The invisible innovator is hardly a brand ambassador for cutting-edge tech. We need to be seen, be celebrated, appear on every magazine cover. She's just holding us back. A living ghost, haunting the company's progress." The words had pierced Rhiannon's carefully constructed detachment, striking a nerve far deeper than mere betrayal. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the sheer, unadulterated contempt for the very struggle she had endured, the very identity she had been forced to adopt. They didn't see her contributions, her sacrifice, her genius. They saw only her scars, her perceived weakness, and the vast wealth she controlled, a wealth they believed was rightfully theirs. A burning indignation, cold and clear, ignited within her. It was then that the idea, audacious and profoundly ironic, had taken root. She would test them. Not just them, but the very fabric of the society they so eagerly inhabited, a society so often fixated on superficiality. She would shed her invisibility, not as Rhiannon Sterling, the revered titan, but as the antithesis of everything they valued, an old, disheveled, disfigured vagrant. She would walk among them, an uninvited mirror reflecting their true selves, observing their reactions when stripped of the facade of power and prestige. The ultimate social experiment. The preparation was meticulous, a testament to her scientific precision and her understanding of human psychology. Drawing on her deep understanding of prosthetics and psychological manipulation, Rhiannon had crafted a disguise that was both physically convincing and emotionally jarring. She used advanced, skin-safe materials to create an overlay that exaggerated her existing scars, making them appear far more gruesome and recent. Her posture was altered, her gait slowed to an unsteady shuffle, her voice subtly rasped and deepened to sound frail and aged. She practiced for weeks, observing the mannerisms of the truly destitute, learning to embody the helplessness and vulnerability that would elicit either compassion or contempt. She would carry nothing of obvious value, only a worn satchel containing a hidden micro-recorder and a secure communication device, her lifeline to her most trusted, discreet legal counsel, Marcus Thorne, who was unaware of the specifics of her plan, only that she was conducting a deep-dive market study that required her to be fully immersed. Marcus, a man of unwavering integrity and impeccable discretion, was the only one she truly trusted within her inner circle. He was a man who understood the nuances of power and ethics, a rare find. The plan was simple in its execution but profound in its implications. She would go to places she frequented, places where Cassian and Serafina were likely to be, and observe. She would offer them the ultimate test: would they see beyond the tattered rags and scarred face to the inherent human dignity beneath? Or would their true, callous nature rise to the surface, unmasked by the sheer contrast? The charity gala, hosted by Omnitech itself, was destined to be the perfect crucible for her grand experiment, the final stage for her reveal. Rhiannon's transformation was complete. The invisible innovator had vanished, replaced by a figure who was, ironically, far more visible yet utterly ignored. Her test began subtly, days before the gala, a prelude to the main event. She frequented the same high-end cafes where Cassian and Serafina often held their power breakfasts, blending into the periphery, a ghost among the well-heeled. She sat on benches in exclusive shopping districts, walked through the manicured grounds of private clubs, a silent observer in a world she had built but rarely inhabited. One crisp morning, she sat hunched on a bench outside the Gilded Bean, a trendy coffee shop known for its exorbitant prices and elite clientele, where Cassian often held casual meetings. She observed him through the window, his laughter echoing, his gestures expansive, as he charmed a group of investors, his face a mask of practiced amiability. A young barista, a kind-faced student named Liam who recognized the regulars and possessed a genuine warmth rarely found in such establishments, noticed Rhiannon shivering slightly in the crisp morning air. He approached her cautiously, a paper cup in hand, his movements gentle. "Here, ma'am," he said softly, his voice devoid of judgment, offering her a steaming cup. "It's just hot water with lemon. Helps with the chill. No charge." Rhiannon looked up, her disfigured face a mask of feigned surprise, her eyes studying his. Liam did not flinch, his eyes holding only genuine concern, a rare commodity in this superficial world. "Thank you, young man," she rasped, accepting the cup, feeling the warmth spread through her numb fingers. "That is, very kind." She watched him retreat, a faint spark of hope flickering within her. Small acts of unsolicited kindness, she noted, still existed in this self-serving world, acts that sought no reward. Liam, she mused, was certainly a candidate for her future consideration, a potential investment in genuine human decency. Later that week, she positioned herself near the ornate entrance of Haute Couture Haven, a luxury boutique where Serafina frequently shopped, often emerging laden with designer bags that cost more than many people earned in a year. Rhiannon sat on a low wall, her back to the shop, pretending to count imagined coins in her palm, her body language conveying utter harmlessness. The doorman, a burly man with a perpetually bored expression and an air of quiet disdain for the less fortunate, had initially eyed her with suspicion, but after a few hours, he seemed to dismiss her as a harmless, if unsightly, fixture. Serafina swept out of the boutique, her arms laden with shopping bags, a whirlwind of expensive fabrics and fragrant perfumes. Her gaze was fixed on her reflection in the glass, a constant appraisal of her own perfection. She nearly bumped into Rhiannon, who had deliberately shifted slightly to block her path, her head down, feigning clumsiness. Serafina stopped abruptly, her face contorting in an expression of sheer annoyance, her perfectly sculpted brows furrowing. "Watch where you're going, you old hag," she snapped, her voice piercing, devoid of any sympathy. She didn't even glance at Rhiannon's face, her eyes fixed on the bags she clutched, as if they were more valuable than human life. Honestly, the nerve. Some people have no respect for private property. Or personal space. She sidestepped Rhiannon with a wide, dramatic arc, as if contamination was imminent, and hurried to her waiting luxury car, her driver already holding the door open, anticipating her every imperious demand. Rhiannon watched her go, a cold, hard certainty settling in her heart. The surface, in Seraphina's case, was indeed the entirety of her being. There was no depth, no empathy, only a brittle shell of vanity and self-obsession. Rhiannon's observations extended beyond her grandnephew and his fiancée. She visited public parks, seeking out the quiet corners, libraries, observing the studious and the curious, and even less frequented corporate lobbies of Omnitech, watching her own employees from a detached perspective. She saw the full spectrum of humanity. The young mother who shared a piece of bread with a pigeon, finding joy in a simple act of kindness, the impatient businessman who brushed off a homeless man asking for spare change with a dismissive wave, the elderly woman who offered a comforting smile to a crying child. Each interaction, each observation, was a data point in her grand experiment, confirming her hypotheses about the varying degrees of empathy in the human heart. She was not merely testing her family, she was taking the pulse of a society she had retreated from, a society that seemed increasingly defined by its digital avatars and manufactured personas, where real human connection was a forgotten art. Her encounters with Cashin were equally telling. One afternoon, Rhiannon sat outside a prestigious art gallery, an institution Omnitech heavily sponsored, its walls adorned with priceless works. Cashin arrived in a gleaming black limousine, escorted by two junior executives, his laughter echoing far too loudly, a performative sound designed for his audience. Rhiannon, hunched on a nearby bench, coughed theatrically, a raspy, attention-grabbing sound. Cashin, mid-sentence, glanced at her, his expression a flicker of irritation quickly masked by a calculated shift in demeanor. He paused, then, with a flourish, reached into his wallet. He pulled out a single dollar bill, extended it with two fingers as if touching it would soil him, and dropped it onto the ground beside her, a gesture of charity meant to be seen. "Here, old woman," he said, his voice clipped, a clear overt act of charity performed for the benefit of his executives. "Now, please, refrain from making a scene. We have important business to attend to." He did not wait for a response, turning immediately back to his conversation, a self-satisfied smirk on his face, oblivious to the piercing gaze of the woman he had just helped. Rhiannon merely watched the dollar bill flutter to the ground, a cynical smile playing on her lips. A paltry sum, a hollow gesture, designed to absolve him of any real responsibility. It confirmed her suspicions. Their kindness was transactional, their generosity a performance, utterly devoid of genuine compassion. As the day of the gala approached, Rhiannon refined her plan, every detail meticulously accounted for. She knew Cashin and Seraphina would be at their most arrogant, their most self-congratulatory, surrounded by the adoring gaze of their peers, basking in the glow of their perceived success. It would be the perfect stage for the final act, the ultimate reveal. She wanted the maximum impact, the most public humiliation for those who so treasured their public image, their carefully constructed facades. She recalled General Alastair Finch. A highly decorated military strategist, now retired, he was a man of immense integrity and intellect, a rare beacon in a world often dominated by self-interest. Rhiannon knew he would be attending the gala. Omnitech had long-standing defense contracts, many of which had been secured through Finch's strategic vision and his unwavering commitment to national security. He had always been a discreet admirer of her work, particularly her pioneering contributions to defense robotics. He understood the complexities of her technology, often asking questions that revealed a deep, almost intuitive grasp of her designs, questions that few outside her inner circle could formulate. She had even met him briefly, many years ago, at a private, highly secured defense summit, where she had been persuaded to make a rare appearance. It was there, she recalled, that he had seen her, albeit briefly and from a distance. The accident had happened just prior to that meeting, and she had still been recovering, a distinctive bandage on her hand covering the initial scarring. She wondered if he would remember that unique detail, a small, subtle clue she hoped he would connect. She would approach them at the gala, not as a helpless vagrant seeking charity, but as someone who dared to infringe upon their pristine world, someone who would be an undeniable affront to their carefully constructed reality, a living symbol of everything they despised. She knew their reaction would be swift, merciless, and utterly revealing. And it would be this very public display of their cruelty that would serve as the catalyst for their downfall, a self-inflicted wound. The trap was set. The bait was herself. And the predators, in their own blinding hubris, would walk right into it, oblivious to the intelligence and power standing before them. The charity gala pulsed with vibrant energy, a testament to Omnitech's perceived benevolence, a grand illusion of ethical corporate power. Cassian Sterling, resplendent in a bespoke tuxedo that cost more than a small car, and Seraphina Thorne, a vision in a shimmering gown that seemed spun from starlight, were the undisputed king and queen of the evening. They held court near the central fountain, accepting effusive compliments, their smiles unwavering, their laughter echoing a little too loudly through the vast hall, a clear declaration of their self-importance. They were, in their own minds, untouchable, the epitome of success and influence. It was precisely at this moment, as Seraphina regaled a cluster of bewildered socialites with a tiresome anecdote about her latest European shopping spree, detailing the exorbitant cost of a handbag, that Rhiannon, in her carefully constructed disguise, made her move. Her tattered coat, stained and worn, seemed to absorb the opulent light rather than reflect it, a stark black hole of poverty in a constellation of diamonds. Her exaggerated scars, meticulously applied to appear truly horrific, seemed to writhe under the ballroom's glow, an unsettling contrast to the smooth, flawless skin of the guests. She moved slowly, deliberately, her stooped gait making her appear frail and harmless, yet her eyes, sharp and unwavering beneath the mask of age and disfigurement, took in every detail, every subtle shift in the room's atmosphere, every horrified glance. She approached Cassian and Seraphina directly, her presence a jarring dissonance in the harmonious tableau of wealth and privilege. Her intention was not to beg, but to provoke, to shatter their illusion of control. She simply stood before them, a silent, living accusation. Cassian, mid-chuckle at Seraphina's anecdote, caught sight of her. His smile instantly froze, replaced by an expression of utter disgust, quickly followed by a flash of anger at the public disruption. "Are you quite mad?" he hissed, his voice dropping to a furious whisper, yet laced with enough contempt to carry to the small cluster of people around them. "How did you even get in here? This is an invitation-only event. Security." His eyes darted around, seeking a guard, feeling his carefully constructed composure begin to crack. Seraphina, her face a mask of primal revulsion, recoiled dramatically, as if touched by something foul. "Oh, for God's sake, Cassian. Don't tell me this is another one of your charitable gestures gone wrong." She turned to the old woman, her eyes narrowed, her lips curled in a sneer. "Look at you. You're a disgrace. Your face, those rags, you are an absolute horror show. Do you enjoy disrupting elegant events? You're clearly deranged. Get out before I have you forcibly removed and charged with trespassing. You are a public health hazard." Her voice, though modulated for public ears, carried a sharp, unyielding edge of cruelty, designed to cut deep. A ripple of murmurs spread through the small crowd that had gathered, drawn by the escalating tension. Some looked away, uncomfortable with the blatant cruelty, others stared with morbid curiosity, relishing the unexpected drama. The old woman, Rhiannon, stood firm, her gaze fixed on Cassian, then Seraphina, her internal resolve like steel. "You speak of disgrace," she rasped, her voice a low, gravelly whisper that somehow commanded attention, cutting through the murmurs. "And yet, what do I see before me but a pair of gilded cages, devoid of substance, of true humanity? Cashin let out a sharp, incredulous laugh, a sound devoid of humor. Substance? You, a vagrant, lecturing me on substance? I run a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I determine the future of technology. You can barely string two coherent thoughts together, judging by that face. He gestured dismissively at her scarred features, his revulsion palpable, his arrogance boundless. You are nothing but an eyesore, a public nuisance. This is our gala, our moment of triumph. You are an insult to everything we represent, to everything Omnitech stands for. Serafina, emboldened by Cashin's outburst, stepped closer, her eyes glittering with malicious satisfaction, savoring the public humiliation. An insult indeed. Look at those horrid scars. It's like something out of a nightmare, a scene from a horror movie. You clearly have no shame, parading that disfigurement around. You deserve to be locked away, far from polite society, where you can't infect others with your misery. Her words, delivered with a chilling sweetness, were designed to inflict maximum pain, to ensure the woman understood her utter worthlessness in their eyes. The crowd gasped, some shaking their heads in silent disapproval of Serafina's chilling vitriol, others simply embarrassed by the spectacle, wishing it would end. Just as Cashin raised his hand, gesturing furiously for a security guard to intervene, a commanding voice, rich with authority and a hint of steel, cut through the rising tension, silencing the room. Enough. All eyes turned. General Alastair Finch, his uniform impeccably pressed, his numerous medals gleaming under the chandeliers, stood a few paces away. At 75, he was a figure of imposing dignity, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes, sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. He had been observing the scene for a few moments, a frown deepening on his distinguished face as he listened to the cruel tirade, a sense of unease growing within him. General Finch approached, his presence radiating an undeniable aura of command, every step deliberate. Cashin, recognizing the esteemed guest and feeling a sudden surge of dread, straightened, a flicker of apprehension crossing his face. General Finch, sir. I apologize for this disturbance. We're having this woman removed immediately. He attempted a charming smile, but it felt brittle and false. The general ignored him, his gaze fixed on the stooped figure of the old woman. His eyes, honed by decades of strategic observation and an unparalleled ability to discern truth from deception, lingered on her face, then, almost imperceptibly, dropped to her gnarled hand, which clutched a worn satchel. A faint, almost imperceptible scar pattern, unique and distinctive, was visible near her thumb, partially obscured by the prosthetic, yet familiar. A flash of memory, distant yet vividly clear, ignited in his mind. He remembered that rare, old photograph, circulated discreetly among top defense contractors years ago, a fleeting glimpse of the reclusive genius, the woman who had revolutionized their field. And then, her eyes. Even through the disfigurement and the carefully crafted elderly facade, her eyes held a spark, an intensity, a unique shade of sapphire that he had only ever seen once before, in the rare moments she had been compelled to interact with the outside world. He knew the stories of the accident, the profound impact it had on her life, the secrecy surrounding her identity. A profound realization dawned on him, cold and clear. He had been subtly aware of the industrial accident decades ago, a hushed affair that had nearly cost Rhiannon Sterling her life and had certainly altered her public presence forever. He knew she was a woman of extraordinary intellect, capable of the most intricate deceptions if she so chose, a master of disguise if the need arose. Slowly, deliberately, General Finch extended a hand, not to Cashin or Serafina, but to the disguised Rhiannon. His voice, when he spoke, was laden with profound respect, silencing the entire ballroom, every ear strained to hear. Madam Sterling, he said, his words resonating with clarity and certainty, cutting through the lingering tension. It is an honor to see you again. Though I confess, your methods of observation remain as unconventional as your genius. The air in the ballroom seemed to crystallize. A collective gasp, like a sudden intake of breath, rippled through the crowd. Cassian and Seraphina stood frozen, their faces draining of color, their meticulously constructed world shattering around them, the pieces falling silently to the polished marble floor. Rhiannon, the old hag, the disgrace, the eyesore, straightened imperceptibly. Her eyes met General Finch's, and a faint, knowing smile, devoid of the prosthetic grimace, touched her lips. She took his extended hand, a gesture of quiet acknowledgement, a silent thank you for his discernment. General Finch turned his piercing gaze upon Cassian and Seraphina, who now looked like two bewildered children caught stealing cookies, their arrogance replaced by dawning horror. His voice, now colder than ice, devoid of any warmth, cut through the silence like a sharp blade. Cassian Sterling, Seraphina Thorne. You stand before one of the greatest minds of our generation, a woman whose innovations have safeguarded nations and revolutionized technology. This woman, whom you have so cruelly disparaged, whose very presence you found an abomination, is Rhiannon Sterling, the founder of Omnitech Dynamics. The invisible innovator whose genius you so carelessly dismiss, and whose integrity you have so profoundly insulted, not just tonight, but for years. He paused, letting the full, crushing weight of his words sink in, watching their faces crumble. Her scars, which you found so grotesque and used as a weapon against her, are a testament to a sacrifice made in the pursuit of knowledge, in an incident that nearly claimed her life while developing a classified defense project crucial to national security. They are not a mark of shame, but a badge of honor, far more meaningful than any fleeting public image you might desperately pursue. Cassian stumbled backward, his face ashen, his jaw slack. No, that's impossible. She's an old vagrant. Our great-aunt she's never seen in public. She's reclusive. She looks nothing like her old photographs. His denial was pathetic, desperate, an attempt to cling to a reality that was rapidly dissolving. Seraphina, her eyes wide with horror, began to tremble uncontrollably. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the raw, unadulterated fear beneath. But her face. It's not what we saw in the old photographs. Her voice caught in her throat, a strangled sound of dawning comprehension. Rhiannon, no longer stooped, though still in her disguise, finally spoke. Her voice, still raspy from the prosthetic, was now imbued with a chilling authority, resonating with power. Indeed, Seraphina. Appearances can be deceiving. Especially when one is so focused on the superficial, one fails to see the truth. The scars you mocked so vehemently were merely an amplification, a test, a mirror held up to your own souls. And you, dear children, have failed spectacularly, publicly, and utterly. She looked around the stunned ballroom, her gaze sweeping over the faces of her shocked employees, investors, and social peers, each expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning understanding. This evening, she announced, her voice growing stronger, each word a hammer blow, was meant to be a celebration of Omnitech's future, a testament to its innovation. Instead, it has become a revelation of its present decay, its moral rot. Cassian, Seraphina, your true faces have been unmasked. And the world now sees the greed, the cruelty, and the utter lack of humanity that truly lies beneath your polished exteriors, beneath your carefully crafted masks of respectability. The irony, to Rhiannon, was exquisitely bitter, a perfect, brutal symmetry. The very public image they so desperately craved, the source of their power, was now irrevocably shattered, exposed not by an enemy, but by their own hubris, their own vile actions. The immediate aftermath was a tableau of utter chaos and stunned silence, a lingering echo of the general's powerful words. Cassian and Seraphina, once the epitome of confidence, now stood exposed, their faces contorted in a grotesque blend of fear, disbelief, and public mortification. Their carefully constructed world had imploded in a single, devastating moment, its foundations revealed to be nothing but sand. Rhiannon, still in her disguise, remained calm, an unyielding figure of judgment amidst the wreckage of their reputations. With a slow, deliberate movement, she finally removed the prosthetic overlay that exaggerated her scars, revealing the true, albeit still damaged, contours of her face. The difference was subtle enough to confirm the deception, yet profound enough to leave no doubt of her identity. Murmurs erupted, followed by gasps of recognition. Many in the room had heard whispers of the accident, seen blurry, decades-old photographs, but few had ever witnessed her unmasked face in person. The true, invisible innovator stood before them, revealed not by choice, but by necessity, by their own cruelty. Cassian Sterling, Rhiannon's voice, now clearer and stronger, resonated through the hall, carrying the weight of her immense authority, the weight of a multi-billion-dollar empire. Effective immediately, you are relieved of all duties at Omnitech Dynamics. Your gross misconduct, your systematic siphoning of company funds, and your utter disregard for the ethical principles upon which this company was founded, are now undeniable, proven by your own words and actions. My legal team, led by Marcus Thorne, will be in touch to initiate formal proceedings for embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty. You will lose everything you have so greedily amassed. Cassian's knees buckled. He clutched at the air, his eyes wide with a desperate, pathetic plea, his voice a broken whisper. Aunt Rhiannon, please. It was a mistake. We didn't know it was you. We were confused. His voice trailed off into a whimpering, ineffectual sound, all his practiced charm evaporated. Rhiannon merely looked at him, her gaze devoid of warmth, devoid of pity. Your cruelty was not a mistake, Cassian. It was a reflection of your character, an intrinsic part of who you are. And your ignorance of my identity only amplified the truth of your nature, it did not excuse it. You judged a book by its cover, and found it wanting, to your own profound detriment. Then she turned to Serafina, who had begun to visibly shake, her face tear-streaked, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks like rivulets of despair, a grotesque parody of her usual perfect appearance. Serafina Thorne, your social media empire, built on a foundation of superficiality and, as this evening has shown, profound cruelty, will now face the full scrutiny of public opinion, a scrutiny you will not survive. Omnitech will be issuing a statement outlining your direct involvement in Cassian's illicit activities, and our immediate withdrawal of all corporate sponsorships from your ventures. Your carefully curated brand, I believe, is about to experience a rather public and precipitous fall from grace, a fall from which there will be no recovery. Serafina let out a wail, a raw, primal sound of pure anguish, far removed from her usual composed demeanor, from her practiced online persona. Her public image, the very essence of her existence, was crumbling before her eyes, reduced to dust. The humiliation was absolute, the ruin complete. Within days, the story would explode across every news outlet, every social media platform, dominating headlines and trending topics. The invisible innovator unmasks her greedy relatives. The irony would not be lost on the public. Cassian and Serafina, once the darlings of the business and social scenes, became pariahs. Their assets were frozen, their bank accounts investigated, their lavish lifestyle exposed as built on fraud and stolen funds. They lost their luxurious home, their expensive cars, their entire network of superficial friends who vanished as quickly as their wealth. Their public downfall was swift, brutal, and utterly comprehensive, a cautionary tale for a generation obsessed with image. As for General Alastair Finch, the reward he received was not monetary, for a man of his stature and integrity valued far more than mere wealth. Rhiannon approached him, a genuine, if still rare, smile gracing her lips, a smile of profound gratitude. General Finch, she said, her voice filled with genuine warmth. Your discernment and integrity have served justice this evening, and protected the legacy of Omnitech. I am profoundly indebted to you. The general bowed his head slightly, a gesture of profound respect for a woman he knew to be a true genius. Madam Sterling, it was merely an honor to ensure true character was recognized, and true villainy exposed. Your work has always been a beacon of innovation and ethical advancement, and it pained me to see it tarnished by such petty, ignoble individuals. Rhiannon offered him far more than money. She offered him an exclusive consultancy position, a strategic partnership with Omnitech that allowed him unparalleled access to her cutting-edge defense technologies, empowering him to shape the future of national security in ways he had only dreamed, to apply his strategic brilliance to the most advanced tools available. She trusted his judgment implicitly, knowing his principles aligned with her own, that he would always use her technology for the greater good. This collaboration elevated his legacy, ensuring his profound impact extended far beyond his military career, a testament to his unwavering moral compass and sharp intellect. He accepted, not for personal gain, but for the betterment of the very nation he had always served, a reward tailored precisely to his soul, far more valuable than any fortune. Months passed. The scandal of the Sterling family's public unmasking continued to reverberate through the echelons of corporate and social power, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and exclusive clubs, a stark warning against hubris. Cashin and Serafina, stripped of their wealth and their social standing, were reduced to footnotes in the annals of greed and hubris, their names invoked as a byword for spectacular failure. Their lavish mansion, once a symbol of their ascent, was sold off to cover mounting legal fees and restitution. Their names became synonymous with scandal, their carefully curated images replaced by newspaper headlines detailing their spectacular downfall, their faces plastered across tabloids as figures of ridicule. They lived in obscurity, their former lives a distant, bitter memory, a constant reminder of the day they mocked a vagrant and lost everything, a self-inflicted wound. Rhiannon Sterling, however, emerged from the shadows with a renewed sense of purpose, her spirit lighter. The public revelation, though initially jarring, had paradoxically liberated her. She remained private, valuing her solitude, but no longer reclusive. She made carefully chosen public appearances, usually alongside General Finch at defense conferences or scientific symposia, her presence a powerful symbol of integrity and innovation, a living legend stepping into the light. Her scars were no longer a burden, no longer a source of shame, but a visible emblem of her journey, a reminder that true strength often lies beneath the surface, forged in adversity and pain. She restructured Omnitech Dynamics, purging the company of those who echoed Cashin's opportunistic, profit-driven values. She instilled a new corporate culture, one that emphasized ethical innovation, social responsibility, and genuine merit, a return to the founding principles that had made Omnitech great. Liam, the kind barista, found himself approached by Omnitech recruiters and, to his astonishment, was offered a full scholarship and a paid internship in the company's burgeoning R&D department, a chance to pursue his dreams. Rhiannon believed in nurturing kindness as much as genius, knowing that true progress required both. Rhiannon, in her vast, quiet estate, finally found a measure of peace she hadn't known in decades, a tranquility born of justice and purpose. She continued to innovate, pushing the boundaries of technology, but now with a lightness in her spirit, knowing that her legacy was secure, entrusted to hands that valued progress and ethics over mere profit and public image. The charade, though painful and emotionally taxing, had been necessary. It had cleansed her world, revealing the dross and elevating the true gold, paving the way for a brighter future. The world, with its dazzling lights and deceptive shadows, often hides the true nature of humanity, cloaking it in illusions. It is in the stark contrast of darkness that character is truly revealed. For when stripped of the accolades, the wealth, and the manufactured appearances, true kindness shines brightest, a small but unwavering flame, and true malice casts the longest, most damning shadow. Rhiannon Sterling had learned this lesson through the crucible of her own life, forged in fire and solitude, and she had, in turn, taught it to a world too often blinded by superficiality. For goodness, however small, however unacknowledged, always finds its reward, and cruelty, however powerful, however entrenched, always finds its reckoning. If Rhiannon Sterling's story resonated with you, you're in the right place. Our channel is filled with powerful tales of hidden truths, unexpected justice, and life's most profound lessons. Don't miss out on our next gripping narrative. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and join our community. What was the most shocking moment for you in Rhiannon's story? Did Cassian and Seraphina get what they deserved? Share your thoughts in the comments below.